Again, I've worked with Art for so many years. I could tell you a story of him and I going up on a trip to one of the I'll just use the word dollar. A company up north, and they start with dollar. And it was a really nice to see him in action, and he did I think an assessment of a company at that time, and I really enjoyed the way he interacted and worked with the team. And again, so happy to have him on board and helping the community and being part of this great group. So Art, I'm going to go ahead and pass on the baton to you. So this is some of the sites. So Nelu is helping us out real quick. So these are some of the people that have joined us, and we continue to grow. And these are some shirts. If you're interested in buying some shirts, please join us. We are not making a dollar out of these shirts. This goes back to the community. So keep that in mind. They're really nice shirts, simple, and it reflects our agile commitment. I think the one that Marcelo loves is free as in beer. Please join. And if you want to recommend a shirt, say, Rick, that doesn't work. Put this shirt up, and we'll get some people to buy it. Let us know. We want to hear you. Okay. All right. And some classes. There are certification classes if you're interested. I'm actually teaching a certified agile leadership class this Saturday. There's only a few seats left. If you're interested, please let us know so that we can get you into the class. Okay? Again, passing the baton on to Art. Art, go for it.
Okay. So let's see if we can pull this thing off. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. Let me do that. Okay. So let's see. I think there's a way to do this. I don't know how to pin this thing so you can see the top.
There you go.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. All right.
Bless
Actually, the question is,
you.
what matters and to whom? So the way we're going to do this is I'm gonna show you guys some metrics, and you're going to tell me, is this something that um, belongs to should be shared by should be restricted to the team, or should be shared by management, or both? The first thing that I want to talk about and say, because the idea is, last time I did one of these things and I lectured too much. So my idea now is, we're not going to lecture too much. We're going to have you folks do a lot of talking. So the first thing when you start to talk about metrics is why. If you're going to use a metric, you want to know two things. One of them is why am I measuring this thing? And the second thing is, if I do measure it, is some going to use the down metric? I don't know how many of you have been involved in a company where everybody does all of this work every week and every month, and they put together all of these metrics, and it goes up into some kind of a dashboard. And then everybody's really excited for a couple of months, and then nobody bothers using the dashboard. And they'll have meetings, and they'll look at status, and people will present PowerPoints on the status. They're going to create their own metrics, and nobody's going to bother. Well, this tells you somebody's doing an awful lot of work for absolutely no reason. And we can create a lot of metrics. We can come up with a lot of metrics. And the idea is, don't. If you need more than 4 or 5, you've got too many. That's my lecture for the night. Anybody want to add to that? Anybody have experiences with metrics like that? Oh, they probably put you all on mute.
Coach, I think they were using chat, and Laura's been saying some metrics may be collected for comfort, for example.
Okay, here, I'll keep the chat going. Yeah, they do collect them for comfort.
are some of the things that I've been thinking recently, and something that I've been proposing to my team and to the PMO director is, right now we're measuring output, how many bugs we solved, how many stories we solved, burn down charts, things like that. But I really think it's more important to get less of that and more of, you know, the outcomes, right? What can be measured as far as the outcomes, right? Did we improve customer satisfaction? Did we take it to the next level where we're helping our customers? Is the features we're delivering, what value are they showing and how to measure that? So that's kind of my thinking of like, what are the good ways to measure outcomes versus output?
Oh shit! So I don't have to do the presentation. So
Or did I make
That's it.
vision flow?
The whole. Thanks, Joe.
blew it out of the water here, John.
Yeah,
Thanks, Joe.
sorry.
Uh,
Forget, like, there, you'll forget everything I said.
But
Art.
that is where we're going to go.
One of the things that I'm concerned with metrics, especially when I go into a company, um, it's been there so long. The metrics are just live there, and they don't even know why they have it. It's just more like this is what we produce. This is what we've been doing for such a long time, and it's just uncomfortable sometimes to actually ask the executives or the C levels, why is this important to you? Why do you use this? What do you need from this? And sometimes it comes from above, and we feel like we're not empowered to actually ask the why.
So that's the first thing you do when you're doing a lean project. You go in and you want to challenge anything that's been going on for a long time. You want to ask, why are we doing this? And it's not just about metrics. Why are we doing this process? Why do we have this control over here? Why do we have this three-step approval process? And what's it costing us? And so rather than saying, let's not do it, the question is, what is this costing us? And are we getting value for our money? Right?
Uh,
So now let's take a look. So what I'm going to do is I'll show you.
I
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
before you go ahead, your question sort of like prompted something that happened to me some
Yes.
years ago. And this organization would always have meetings and meetings after meetings, right? And I sort of like did the cost of meetings, and in the result was alarming. So I asked the VP, I said, I noticed there's a lot of meetings going on here. Would you want to me to share with you what I've observed? And he went, yes. I thought he was going to be very upfront with what I asked. Sorry, receptive of it. But he wasn't. He wasn't too happy. And I thought the unhappiness was coming from that they spend so much money on meetings, but it was the fact that I brought it up to them, and he didn't like it.
Well,
Yeah. So
um,
my point is that be very careful how you what you measure and who you show them to.
yes. So a couple of things I would think about, which is, you got a point there. You got to be careful which manager you're talking to, because if it's a middle manager, they've got different concerns than saving the company money. So you have to understand who is it who cares that it costs money.
Yeah, this was a VP.
Well, VPs, not every VP cares about what they're spending. So because they're not measured on it. So when we talk about measurements, who's getting measured on the cost? If it's not costing him money because other people are wasting time and they're coming to his meetings, he doesn't care. But the other part is, before we go ahead and start making, showing these things to people, we need to get their buy-in on the fact that we're going to take a look at this. So, like, one of the things I did, my last company, was I went into the executive and I said, I'm hearing complaints about people having to go to too many meetings. Would you like me to do an analysis? And the first time it was yes, but it wasn't a priority. And it took 3 months, 4 months before it became enough of a priority for them to say, yes, let's do an analysis. Right? And then the analysis was a little bit more broad than just what is it costing us, but who are the people who are going to the meetings and do they need to be there? Right? Let's see that the meeting is important. We don't want to tell them the meeting isn't important. It might duplicate something, but they might have a reason for it. But who needs to be there? I'll tell you, this is very hard to deal with because everybody wants to be there, because nobody wants to be left out. So you need a lot of executive support in order to change that kind of behavior. It's very hard. All right. So just some thoughts on that from the coaching world. Bring it up on Saturday morning. We'll talk more about that one. That's a good question. Tough challenge.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so question. Burn down chart. So I'm asking 3 questions. Is it useful? And who should use it? What do y'all think?
Yes. Hi, this is Jorge. Yeah, I'll say yes, it's useful for everybody. It's useful for the team, for product owner, Scrum Master, and also for management, for transparency. How are we going in the sprint? And the team can take action to, if we're falling behind, it can take action to put things in place and finish the sprint, help each other, etc.
Okay, what does everybody else think?
I have a divergent opinion. Yes, is it useful? I think to the team only. I think it's more useful for a Scrum Master, especially when the team is new, to uncover what is not being said or discussed. But I try to keep this away from management because they like to weaponize things and then start having their own ideas on how they should dictate how a team should be working instead of allowing the team to figure out how they should work.
I totally agree. I would say it depends, and kind of touching a little bit on that point, is really depends on the maturity of the team, right? Because a lot of times what I learned is the developers, they will, develop and you'll see the line go straight across, and then once you get towards the end of the sprint, it drops off. Things start completing, right? So it really is, it's a good indication for the Scrum Master to see, okay, looks like there's not a whole lot of movement that's happening, right? So then they can look and find out the reasons why. But yeah, other than that, I don't see a major use for a burn down chart personally.
I have a question on that because it seems, I would agree. I think the problem with the estimates is one team can estimate something a certain way based on the maturity and how their dynamics, and the team can measure it another way. So they're not, you can't be mixing the way you're evaluating teams, because even the numbers wouldn't be accurate. It's not like a measure of a diameter on a piece of metal or something that you could measure with a precision and an accuracy to it. So how do you even, if you're comparing the team's performance over time, I see the value in it. But if you're comparing different teams across an organization, then you have to have a constant and a pretty solid way of even collecting the data. Otherwise, it's not accurate. It's not precise. I don't know.
Yeah, I like a burn up. I like a burn up chart a little bit better because the burn down indicates an end, that it's finite, that there is a completion. And we all know in Agile and Scrum that it is an ongoing process.
Yeah, but it's reflected in the sprint. So the end of the sprint is when your burn down chart would reset.
I also think about it another way, because sometimes though, like where I am right now, people just look at it at that day and that's it. Maybe at the end of the sprint. Sometimes We don't even, some Scrum teams don't even look at it at all. And then at the end of the day, just like Joe said, it's going to trend one way. And coupled with the fact that some developers don't like logging their hours and all that. So it's going to lag one way. And then at the end of the day, it falls down and you just have that discussion. And you say, oh, we need to improve on this, we need to improve on that. So, but then when your managers now start looking at it, just like Andre said, they now start putting pressure like, why is it going? Why is it skewing? Why is it not coming? This is the way it should be. And then it's weaponized at the end of the day.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because if we, keep hammering the developers like, hey, we're not going this burn down chart, you guys are not following it and it's looking really bad and management is concerned, well, guess what they're going to do?
They're going to take it to the next level. Like this recently happened to me. Someone looked at the burn down chart because they had access to Jira, said, why does it look this way? Everything, why the line was plateaued because people were sick, all sorts of things. They were taking vaccines, whatever, a whole bunch of things, but they made it in the end. But what that prompted that person to do, which was a stakeholder, was to now go into the active sprint and started taking apart, oh, well, this subtask wasn't done, or this. I'm like, dude, that's not even your job.
Yeah.
So it gets down a very slippery slope once you invite them into this area.
I agree.
That's part of it. And the other thing is your developers are just gonna, modify their stuff or not have good work because they're trying to meet the burn down chart, right?
Burn down.
Yeah, so they're gonna have bugs in their stuff. So I would not put a whole lot of weight into the burn down chart. Just my thoughts.
Joe, it also gives us an opportunity to, as Scrum Masters, to actually protect our team, right? One of those principles that we talk about so often is having motivated individuals. And so if we're taking a snapshot saying, hey, we're about finished and doing what we're doing, like it's just an opportunity for the Scrum Master to, one, be able to tell a story, and then two, to be able to protect the team and have those people kind of back up. Because if you can tell them, hey, these people are out here getting vaccines, I think that's a story to be told, right? We can take a look at, I mean, the numbers will kind of speak for itself, other than the people just saying, oh, well, this is doing this. We can determine what that story is. We can, as Scrum Masters,
yeah.
We can.
And I agree with that point of view. And it's a guide, right? It's just a kind of something to say, hey, is there a problem? Let's take a look at what the problem might be, and let's try to help solve that problem, help the developers reach their goals. So that's about what I would use it for.
I think what really, and I agree with every single thing that you guys have mentioned so far, especially how, management or different groups decides to weaponize this. Yeah. But I think they for some reason people forget what development is. It's not a cookie cutter world. It's not just do A, B, and C and we get there. There's a lot of learnings, a lot of, as you're going through this pipeline. So, the idea is that this is going to tell you a story, but the story is really on the complexity of the work that we're doing. And that everything, if you ever see burn down charts that look so closely related to that ideal burn, you know that they're rigging it. You know there's something going wrong there, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you don't see those, hey, hiccups, hey, this happened. But again, just for a purpose of one information radiator, which needs other complementary data points to have a conversation, which is the key. This to me is a team metric. This is the team looking through this to have a conversation. Why did you have a spike there? Did you add more stories to it? Well, what was it that the new stories, why did we add a new story? But again, very personalized to the team and to what they're going through.
Yeah, I'd agree. So let's put this in two perspectives. First of all, from my perspective, this is a team metric, and keep management's hands off. This is for the team to improve. The second thing is, it depends on what's the team doing, and what's the architecture of the organization and doesn't allow them to work like this, or is test a separate organization, and that's just the way it is in the company right now. So the team can't do anything except have the developers develop stuff and then go over to testing. In that case, there's limited value in the chart. So you need to understand the context in which you're using it. But this is for the team to look at and see what can we learn from it. And when you're getting a lot of stories added into your sprint, that's a good thing to look at this chart and to identify, because that gives you real evidence to go back and say, you know what, somebody's sticking stories in our sprint over here, and this is not the team's fault. This is coming from someplace. So just my thoughts on that. But you guys were exactly right on with this, because management will come in and say, how am I supposed to know what you guys doing during the sprint?
Art, another thing that I've done, you see the ideal burn, that's the blue thing coming down. I've actually, again, I've gone berserk with this measurement stuff. I've actually looked at a team and said, you know what? For some reason, you guys don't normally burn this way. You normally burn this way. And then I create their own ideal burn down. And then I actually track to that to say, you know what? On Fridays is when you really close down a lot of the stories, or you really do that. And that gives me a better view or expectations. It's something that I played around with, and it was interesting to see that certain teams had a certain pattern that I could, emulate.
So Rick, I have a question on that.
Yes.
So what happens if they go against that first ideal that you drew, kind of change their ways? How would you now track that?
It's a learning. It's me experimenting as a coach. I think that's what we don't do much enough. We should also be experimenting. Hey, let's try this. Oh, they didn't go this time. Hey, what did we learn? Why didn't it go that way? And that's it. Maybe now they're doing something a little different, and we learn from it. But it's just, for me, it's nice to always look for patterns, look for ideas that you can remember. The whole idea is to warn, to give updates like, hey, this is a possible problem. Oh, there isn't? Okay, let's keep going.
And I'll throw in one other comment, which is that I don't have the burn up chart here, but some people really prefer the burn up chart because it shows you what's left.
Yeah.
So it can be very, very helpful as well. All right, here's another one. This is another management favorite, velocity.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's the one I hate the most.
I hate this one too. I hate this with a passion. Yes.
I work with a team, or a couple of teams actually. The manager is always telling me, Kemi, you've got to get the velocity up. And I know. And each time the teams are talking, it's all about velocity. How do we increase the velocity? And this doesn't have any corresponding or correlation to the what they're delivering every sprint. But as soon as they start to sprint, they're looking at, our velocity was 10 last sprint. The product owner is not going to be happy that it's 10 again this sprint. And I thought, okay, how many stories have you got in your backlog? How many were there last sprint? And you could tell it was higher. But because of the way they've done the estimation, obviously the story points will be lower, right? Yeah. But it's always about velocity for them, rather than how many stories or how many work items can we complete and deliver value this sprint. It's just annoying. And then you have the management comparing apple for oranges, right? It's just crazy. I can go on and on.
So my last engagement, which was one of the big bands here in Charlotte, which you all know, when we start talking about velocity and taking velocity as in man hours and putting 2 weeks for 13 story point and all that, that got me in trouble quickly, because it was just something like, okay, this is not how we should do this. And it got to a point, even the team itself was not sure what they were doing anymore, because management is telling them something else and we're doing something else, and they're comparing the velocity. They're asking me, why is this task not done? Why is the velocity so low this time? Why is it so high? Some is lost, I don't know. I think we should call a meeting and take velocity out of metrics.
That's great. So does anybody think that there's value to velocity?
Art, I just have a question related to what is velocity used for? Velocity, from my understanding, is used to predict how much stories you're going to do in the future. It's a predicting tool to say we normally do 100. So if I look at my backlog and I see 100, 100, okay, we think we're going to be able to do this with 80% confidence level, right? That's
Yes.
how we were taught, right? Hey guys, this is how you do velocity. So I would ask the question, well, what other things do we have that can do that then? How do we predict if for some reason we don't use velocity as a gauge, right? And then remember, there's two things with velocity. There's velocity that's how do I predictable, and there's velocities that are like this, right? Where you one day you have 5 and the other day you have 90, 300, right, or whatever. Or one sprint, excuse me. So that's an interesting thing, like velocity that ranges there, and then the velocity that's just actually more predictable. I don't know. I'm still would love to see who could answer that question. As in, well, what is the tool you use to predict future releases?
I think what the problem is that management and all people in, I don't know, organizations are not looking at it as a predictive metric. They're looking at it as how a team is actually working. They're looking at it as a measure of work that the team is doing. And so once it starts skewing, if it's not the same this time, if it's going up and down, if team B's velocity is constant, it's staying between 60 and 65, and yours is staying between 75 and is skewing between 85, they start asking you what is going on. So just like you said, it's supposed to be a prediction. But also, if you're asking me to make it, I can start making all the stories all 8 points. And that way I get the same thing you want me to get to you. But then does it actually show that we're working, or it now throws away that predictiveness that we're looking for, or it throws away all the unknowns?
I want to add something. Dave Sharrock, he did something on epic budgeting, and you can Google that, Dave Sharrock epic budgeting. And it's a different way of figuring out how teams can better forecast their deliverables in such a way that you can do it in quarterly, right? And you're not using estimation the way we know it to be. Rather, you're using small, large, medium size, extra large. And it would often say that when a team starts saying, I don't know, you need to get them back into the, what is it that you know? And give me some letters here. So that way they're not thinking of numbers, rather they're just thinking of how complex that capability is. Because he says that when they say they don't know, they just don't want to think about it, and they're looking at how they can best pad it. And these are all assumptions, right? So you get your team to think in terms of extra large, small. You get the gist, and then they put all the features into buckets, what they're building, and then you would ask them, what does small means to you, right? And that way you multiply. So if they said small is 4, which means that for you to get medium, it is 2s rather, 2s, and you get your m, right? And then you work your way through that. And by doing that, you don't have to estimate the way the team gets hung up about, estimate. And for a new team, you don't even have anything to work out from. But you're now looking at how much of this can we work in the sprint. So that way, the product owner uses that as a forecast tool, and the team doesn't have to worry about velocity. I know I didn't say this in such a way that Dave would have explained it better, but if you look at his videos, because I know he's done some webinars around it, you will get a better understanding of what I'm trying to explain. But it's a fantastic thing to look into.
But I think they're still measuring on what you've been able to complete in the past. They're still looking at the past to say, because you've completed these amount, you don't have to call velocity, these amount of work. This is the predictability from small, medium, and large to say we've completed, 50 smalls in 1 month. So we should be able to complete 50 smalls in the next month. There's still a gauge of historical data.
You could say that, but in this instance, it's the team starting new team. They don't even know what they're going to be committing to, right? So you're lifting up a team right now. They don't even have a velocity. You can't even start measuring velocity until the third or fourth sprint, right? So what are you going to be working out from?
Well, I mean, that's typical anyhow. You have to go through, 3-4 sprints to figure out what your average velocity is.
Right.
So even if you did small, medium, and large t-shirt size, it would be the same thing. Kind of going back to Rick's point as well.
So the key point here is that how are we using the metric and who's using it? So when the team uses it, the team can figure out how to improve their predictability. How can they improve their sprint planning? Right? Because they want to plan so that they can complete their work. The trick is the management has to be separated from how they use it. They can't use it to evaluate a team and measure teams against each other. There has to be a rule that says they can't do that. If they can't do that and the culture is right, then management can use this predictor for delivering features and delivering value to the business and do some analysis that way. If management is coming down and also using it as a way to measure teams, then the data is going to be inaccurate because it's exactly like Godwin says. We'll game the system. You tell me you want to see how many points I can put out. I can put out 500 points. Just change how I'm right. A large story just became 120 points. No problem.
That's what I was trying to say about the burn down chart. Same thing.
Right. So the key is culture and how they use it, but it's not the metric itself. It's interesting. I love this discussion because all the world looks at these things. Oh yeah, Agile. Yeah, we're going to measure velocity. Yeah, we're going to measure burn down. No problem. And look at the discussion you have to go through to figure out how to use these things and how to get value out of them. Right? But you go into the class, we're going to teach this. Oh yes, Scrum Master, this is what you're going to do.
Oh, I love that, Art. And just velocity by itself also gets very scary because so what? You're improving velocity. You're creating more crap to production. Like you're just doing it faster now. You're putting a lot of crap faster into production.
Oh, well, give you all the you want.
It would be an interesting metric to measure velocity versus bugs.
Quality and also.
So let's keep going here. We get to the meat of the discussion. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, except for the fact that a lot of people have no idea what it is and why we use it.
Oh, I love this.
Right? So does anybody know how we can use this? Since Marcelo isn't here?
The only time I look at this chart is when I want to gain a new person to the team. Look, your testers are not going well. I'm needing more testers. Give me more money. Like, that's it. The truth is, most people don't know how to read this. It's convoluted and it hurts their eyes. And the only other time I've used this is when we've changed Scrum Masters just to prove that the current Scrum Master is more effective than the old one. So that's about it.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it now, and I guess the first thing that sticks out to me is the weighting. I would want to know, like if this was a Jira I know sometimes you can click within certain areas and see the stories that are waiting, and then you can kind of address those, and that would be helpful.
Yes, that's right. That's what you can
So,
do. You can
so
look
I,
for bottlenecks.
so I actually love this. I actually love the cumulative flow diagram. Sorry for people that don't like it. This to me has especially when you have a waterfall team. Like you're not seeing deeper into this. This is actually showing you how you're passing the baton from one group to the other, one group to the other. And it really tells a story. Each of these things, if you really dive into learning what the cumulative flow diagram, it actually tells you a story as in saying, look, we had a this was the delay of moving on to this group here. And you can actually dive deeper. And if you read Little's Law, Little's Law, we just talked about whip limits, and I don't know, or maybe you haven't talked about whip limits, but there's an ideal state to work with a team, an ideal flow to work with a team, right? It's and with the whip limits, and what you do is again Little's Law, and I wish I could write on the screen. If I was Marcelo was here, he would write on the screen. It would just be a little square that you would put in, and you could actually measure whip. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Oh my God, are you going through this? So you can actually measure and say, this is the work in progress, and at this current speed with this type of work in progress, this is how fast. This is the lead time of how fast we're getting all this work done. And what's cool about the cumulative flow diagram, if everyone's understanding what I'm talking about, it's with time, you're going to actually determine what's the best whip limit to get the ultimate flow. It's a beautiful thing to see when you're looking at them and they're like, oh my God, they have a ton of work on their plates, and suddenly you lower their whip limits, and then they're producing 10 times the amount. The lead time shrinks so much. Um, but there you're doing the math behind it. Instead of crying, oh, we're overworked, oh, you're pushing too much crap to me. This is where you actually tell them, here's the math behind it. And this is how I've proven to you that by lowering my whip limit, we're actually doing a lot better. So I love this from a metrics, but I'm biased. I do apologize. um, sorry, Art.
It's okay. I thought I jumped
Rick,
ahead.
Rick, I just have to comment about the way Rick was telling the story. It's just he was just drawing me in. Great.
Right? I thought I jumped ahead. I didn't put the two together. But yeah, that's the idea. We're looking for bottlenecks and we're looking for cause and effect, right? So it's interesting. Yeah, this is a valuable tool, but once again, management would not have a clue what to do with this, but this could be great for the team.
The last part of that is the supply and demand. Like sometimes you get so much new stuff that starts just accumulating there, and then you're not realizing that because it's been waiting there such a long time, that now to actually work on it, a lot of it is throwaway. So where do you show that? Where do you show that you're building out your backlog so big that you're actually hurting yourself? Again, I'm in love with this too.
So I take that a step further. So everybody talks about supply and demand. And a number of years back, I started talking about demand and supply in accordance with Little's Law. Because the problems that we always face, and this is the product from the product owner, is that we're always getting more demand than we have supply to meet. So the problem is the demand. But what happens is that we start with, supply demand is the way, the phrase goes out there in economics. But the idea is that you should manage your demand to meet the supply, not the other way around. Unless, and then what you got to do is you got to find a way to bring them into balance. Because if the demand is, let's say you got a product and there's customers out there, it's the same thing. It shouldn't be supply and demand. It should be, I should be able to meet the demand. Let me take a look at my supply and what do I have to do in order to fix it so I can meet the demand. We should start with the demand first and then figure out the supply. Anyway, I did a big piece of work on that. So here is a question. This is the other one, throughput. Has anybody actually come across this where the company says, I want to measure how many stores you did? Hey, then we can compare teams. How many stores are you guys doing? Can you think of a value in this, and have you come across it? This is interesting. I actually heard a very senior Agile coach propose this as a corporate metric for management to look at. His theory was that if we look at how many stories you're completing per sprint, it will tell us whether or not your stories are small and roughly the same size. The more stories you can do, the smaller they are. Now, of course, this gets distorted, which is then we compare teams and say, hey, this team did more stories than you did. And you sit back and say, well, we couldn't break this one down because it's a very complicating architecture. And you can get into all kinds of trouble with this. But you should just be aware that there are people out there who will come forward with this as a metric.
Or we see that in a more of a lean environment, you know, like with the military, for example.
Yeah, go ahead. You might, because you want to measure throughput in a lean environment, right? How many widgets can we manufacture in an hour?
You have to figure out if you're making an improvement or not. So
yes,
that's the key thing. Are you improving or not? If you're not improving, then you have to then figure out why are you not improving, or why is it a change? Where is the trend?
Right. So this is another one of those things that the true answer is it depends. And in some cases, this can be valuable. Probably in Kanban more than Scrum. Right? Because throughput in Kanban would be really valuable. Right? Are we improving our productivity? So it could be a really valuable metric in the right place. Boy, metrics can really take it down a rat hole. Okay.
So Art, real quick.
Yeah.
So when they ask you the question, because I'm getting this question all the time, I want to know whether this team is doing good or this team is doing good. Like, and I want real numbers. How do you answer that question? Like, let's say you're the owner of the company, and you want to know which team is doing well, and this is the kind of mindset. I'm just curious how you answer that.
All right. Let's take a look at other metrics. All right, and I'll just wrap that one up. We did Little's Law. This is control charts. If you haven't used it, use them. See this stuff up here, these little guys out here. You know, this tells you how many things are being done at a given point in time. We want to understand the outliers. Again, it's not something for management. It's just something there to help the team. Now we can take a look at some broader metrics, lead time and cycle time. Let's first talk about lead time. Think about it from a customer view. So anybody want to tell me about lead time?
Is how long in total will take to deliver something.
Right. What do you think the value is?
Well, they want to know when the product will be ready.
Okay.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, that's one way you're using it, right? We're using it to tell us how long it's going to take to deliver something from the time that the work came in. Right? From a customer view, how long do I have to wait?
Exactly.
Right?
Time to market.
Time to market.
Right. Cradle to grave.
So can you think about that as being something important to management also?
Yes.
Right? And what if we as a team are improving this? Then we're heroes.
Yeah, return on investment will be quick.
Right. So this is one of those where we start to get into the idea that it's got value for the team, and it can also have value to management. Now, cycle time, right? How do you use cycle time?
Time in between each gate from one step to the next.
Right. So this is see, this is where I miss Marcelo here, because the cycle time is something in Kanban that becomes critical, but it's also critical in Scrum. I used it for teams, right? So I got a team, and my burn down chart does not look like the one I showed. It looks like the one that Rick described, which is it goes straight across and then it comes down like a waterfall, right? So that tells me that my developers are doing a lot of work and it's going into testing, and all of a sudden, everything is tested at the same time. It all gets done, and we don't have a smooth flow. So let's take a look within the team. Are we doing waterfall within the team? Can I measure the cycle time within the team? Are the handoffs in the team?
Sets the pace. Sets the cadence.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can measure that cycle time. Nothing to do with management. This is the only thing I'm going to do with management is I'm going to tell them this is an analysis I did, and because of this management, you have to change stuff. Right? You as a team can use this to convince management that they have to change their practices. And then you can get a lot of value out of it. But lead time, sure. We as a team can use it and management can use it. Rick, does that help?
Yeah, just to add a little bit more on cycle time.
Oh,
so,
sure.
so the cool thing about cycle time, and you mentioned earlier, is the wait time. We're not just measuring, look how long it's taking to go to here to here. The cool thing is when you also measure, you know what? You had all this thing ready for you, but you couldn't handle it yet. You had this thing waiting in queue from the previous step, but you couldn't handle it. That gives you an understanding that you're not really optimized yet. Am I echoing? um, so keep that in mind when you think of cycle time. That there's also some other elements included as you pass it on to the next.
So while we're on this, would you guys want a session one Wednesday night on lean analysis, on how to measure this stuff and improve it?
Absolutely.
Anything regarding lean and lean practices? Yes.
Okay. All right, Rick, we've got to make a note.
I got it.
Right.
Remember the lead time, just to add to what Art was saying earlier, so we can understand the lead time. I love that he's saying this is, how you're predicting work getting through. But think about the work in the queue. If you're the 20th step here in the queue, you now have a better understanding because of the lead time, when your stuff is finally going to get to ready. So it actually sets expectations as well. Look, my stuff is moving up the queue, and now I understand this lead time and what it's going to really take.
Can I ask some questions? Because I'm a little bit still not clear on this one.
Sure.
So in terms of lead time, cycle time. So lead time from the time we get, and I'm trying to think in sprints, right? So say we have say we have an epic, right? That's going to cover 3 sprints, right? Could we say that is our lead time, right?
So think about, like all things, it depends how you want to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we can, so typically in Scrum, you're measuring lead time from the time it gets into your backlog.
So from the back time to time you deliver it?
The reason is because, and I'll move back up to epics, right? So the time it gets into the backlog, because from a product owner perspective, that's the lead time I'm looking at. How long from the time I put something into the backlog until the time it gets delivered,
Okay.
right?
And then,
On
so
an
then,
epic level, you can also look at it,
Mhm.
and you can look at it on a feature level. Depends on what you're using. Are you using epics, using features? Do you want it right? So I'm committing a feature. This is going to be something that's going to have some functionality, some capability that a user is going to use. So that might be even more interesting to the business.
Yep. All right, so I got lead time. Now cycle time. Are we saying cycle time could be a sprint, or are we saying
Just
it
think
goes
about
from,
handoffs or anything that you're handing off from one group to another. You know, a smaller, hey, if I'm passing it on to this, now I finished my cycle time. Now we're going to another cycle time. So
so it could
different
be what,
stages, different
from
stages.
dev to QA,
Yeah,
or
that
from,
could
Yep.
be a cycle time. Yes, I moved it on to do. Now I'm moving it on to this group here.
So Joe, think about columns, Kanban or Scrum, and from my backlog, I'm moving it into. I might even have it go into analysis, and then I might have it go to development. Then I might have it go to
Peer
QA.
review.
I might have it go to integration testing. Each of those is a cycle.
okay, that's what I thought. All right, now
If
I'm
I'm
good.
not on cloud, then I got a deployment.
I know we were talking about, but I just wanted to put it in an agile sense.
Yes.
The other way to think about it is that the customer never sees cycle time. The cycle time is always behind the scenes. The customer sees lead time.
Lead time.
Yeah, makes sense.
Customer never sees cycle time.
Yep, gotcha.
See, that's
When
what
did you sneak in?
Look who showed up.
How do we let him in? Who
Why do we
broke the
let him
rule?
in? When did you sneak in?
Hey, we're talking about the bag of chips there. All that.
I
bag of
was
chips.
doing cycle time earlier on my bike.
We got to put
in the rain. It's raining.
Not on the West Coast.
Oh, all right.
No, not here. If it's supposed to rain, we don't get any rain.
Yeah, we've been lucky. It's the first time we got rain in a while.
I have a quick question regarding cycle time, because it appears my understanding is different from what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
My understanding of cycle time is how long that work item moves through the system for. So you have from the time someone actually picks it up until the process ends and it goes into production, as opposed to saying that the cycle time is when it moves from one stage, one column on a Kanban board to the other. So I think there's a contradiction there.
Femi, you just answered yourself. You said when it moves through the system.
Yeah, but I do want to add something. So this is funny. Here I am going to Kanban University and seeing David, which is the master over there, and there are books out there that actually have that change. So I actually have seen that kind of verbiage where they actually take cycle time and they feel that's the full from start to finish. So just be aware of that. But when you look at Kanban and you look at the other stuff, they're documented this way.
So some of this stuff is language and people trying to sell you things, but basically, generically, a cycle is the amount of time it takes you to do something.
Exactly.
So you decide what it is that means. And if they want to say cycle time is the same thing as lead time, whatever. You can say
the original manufacturing definition, as I learned it, is cycle time. Think of like ordering a car, right? You order a Mustang. It takes me 2 weeks to get a Mustang, but every 2 hours a Mustang is pumping out of the factory. So cycle time is the 2 hours.
Exactly.
Lead time is 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Lead time is 2 weeks.
Right. So the cycle in that case is the amount of time it takes to manufacture a car. But you can take that then and break it down further. So we'll do a session. Leon, we got asked to do a session on lean. and so we can do analysis.
Well,
We can do some flow work.
So let me put this I'm going to put this in the chat too. So, and I know we're trying to put this in a Scrum context, but of course, cycle time is awesome in a Kanban context. But it's really, if you think of a sprint, let's just say there's 10 stories in the sprint. The cycle time is not the start and end of the sprint, although what you're trying to do might be to complete all the items, all the stories in the sprint, right? It's the cycle time is for each of those stories, how long does it take to be able to start work and complete work? Now, again, to everyone's point, that work could go someplace else. But different stories or tasks might have different cycle times within a sprint.
Yeah. So that's what makes Lean so interesting, and not as simple as it looks in pictures. Because it's all about how to do these things to improve them.
Once we got the measurement, I guess, what do we do with it? So cycle time, do we look improve by shortening that time?
So remember, we're all looking for waste. We're all trying to remove items on the list. What I normally do when I do this is you got to be careful, because sometimes people go completely crazy and say, I want to measure so much on every single step down the line. And you're just overwhelming data points, which gets crazy. What I do is once I see that there is a pain point, like the bigger picture, and then shows this is taking 20 days to do while everything else is taking a few hours to do. That's where I can dive deeper into the 20-day thing and say, what can I decompose a little bit better to maybe visualize it better, right? The second thing that people do when they really want to understand bottlenecks is they actually lower down the work that you're doing there. So you could truly see the hills of where the things are actually colliding at. When you have so much width, sometimes you just don't know. Everything is just crawling, and you have no way to identify where is that real, bump in the road.
Yeah, so Joe, I put in the chat basically. So remember, cycle time is not a means to an end, but you need to make sure, like what Rick talked about and others right here, you need to be looking at quality and technical debt, right? So your cycle time can be dragged down by technical debt. And you could have, how many defects are added to the product as new features are developed. Looking at that, you could be looking. So there are a number. You could be looking at the time on a task. So, and what Rick talked about. So the calendar time. If you can shrink a task from 6 days to 2 days, right? That might be good. And
Gotcha.
you want to be looking at appraisals and approvals and other types of things that have impact on cycle time. If you really drill down on cycle time, right? Now you could remove code reviews. Let's just say to improve cycle time, we're going to get rid of code reviews. It's unnecessary, right? So is that the best thing to do?
No.
So that's why. So where Leon's going is that's why one of the first things you do is you take a look at a process and you identify what are the steps in a process that do not add value.
And so there's this balance of quality and technical debt, right? So again, I can remove code reviews and that will go ahead and improve my cycle time, but will that impact my quality?
It will.
Absolutely.
All right, that makes sense.
So
I was thinking too, sorry, Rick. It looks like it's a cumulative chart, right? So when I looked at the other one, the first thing that came to my mind, which is kind of what you were saying, Leon, is okay, there's a delay, right? Why is there a delay? So then that's gonna, have me look at cycle time.
Exactly. The cumulative flow diagram there reveals bottlenecks. Visually. And in fact, when I see those on teams, and you can get these in Jira on Scrum teams, it doesn't matter. You can get them for both Scrum or Kanban teams. I look at this and I can see immediately within 5 seconds where problems are.
Yep.
And where bottlenecks are, and then you drill into what those bottlenecks are going.
Gotcha.
But I want to add one more thing that Art mentioned earlier. It's about seeing the full value stream that's so critical, because I've had so many people complain about IT, and they start saying, "Look how long you're taking to do, and you're taking 3 days to do this, right? You're taking 3 days." But when you look at the full value stream and you say, well, what happened with the idea? When did it get to here? When did it get to that? The whole process took like freaking 3 months. And they're all worried about this part here and trying to fine tune this one. When if they would have just taken care of this a little bit, maybe had better communication, you would have improved the full value stream. So it's a great conversation to have when you actually see the full length of where that ticket comes in and goes through that cycle or lead time. That makes
And
sense?
even, yeah, and even to make it more complicated, did we talk about tax time?
Well,
wait time.
Yeah, so I'll put that in the chat. So if you want to go even further on this, there is tack time versus cycle time versus lead time, right? And tack time is the maximum amount of time you need to comply with to meet customer demand. Okay. So those are, if you want to combinize your team or your products, those are the three things to think about: lead time, cycle time, tack time.
Yeah, I didn't get into tack time.
That's fine.
So what we decided is that we'll do a session on lean. And we can talk about, we'll throw in tack time.
How many more slides do you have, Art?
Let's see. So the idea that we're doing, Leon, is not too many, but the idea is we went from so the idea is which metrics should be for team, which metrics should be for management, and which should be for both. We've gone through the ones that looked like they were team, and we want to keep it that way. Then we started moving into some that might be hybrids.
Keep on going.
And now we're talking about aging WIP.
I'm aging right now.
Right? Okay. If you haven't done this, it can be really valuable for both the team and maybe even for management, especially with epics. It goes along a little bit with lead time, but when stuff is sitting there forever, you really got to understand why. Is it even worth it? Next one, epic and release burn down charts, right? We talk about sprint burn down charts, but you can actually do this for epics and releases. Now we're also looking at something else that a management team might be interested in, right? Because we can talk a little bit about predictability and how we're delivering on customer value. So that we don't run out of time, we got a couple of more things to talk about. So now we're talking about over here what management starts to look at. OKRs, objectives and key results. And everybody have been talking up till now about KPI, key performance indicators. So I will tell you my view and then you can discuss it and argue. I believe that KPI, while people have tried to use them for delivering value, KPI tend to be measuring outputs. How many stories did we complete? How many points did we complete? How many education sessions did we deliver? We're Agile coaches. How many education sessions did we deliver? How many people did we take through our Agile through our education classes? Those things are KPI. It doesn't tell me whether or not anybody is more or less Agile. And OKRs takes us closer to what it is the business is looking for. And OKRs are done on every level. So a team can have its own OKRs. And if we can define business objectives with business benefits from our objectives, and we can figure out how we're going to measure delivering objectives that are valuable to the business, we might come up with ways that then the business could look at how we're doing. There is no one solid metric I can give you which would meet that, but that's the idea. Want to talk about that?
So you say, Art, the KPI is more about the individual, the key result for the individual, and the OKRs, what the business objective, and what is the business looking for?
So
because I'm always confused between those two.
So KPI is usually a measure of some sort of a throughput. And while in the past KPI would often by businesses be used to show business value, right? How many widgets did we manufacture last month? That's a KPI, right?
It's you said traditional business value, correct?
Traditionally, they've used it for value, but it wasn't always about value. They confused value and throughput, and they all got lumped together as metrics, but they're not. So KPI tends to measure throughput, but that doesn't tell us about the value that we're delivering. And OKRs gets closer to the business value. So this is my belief. This is how I convey it.
And then Art, you said the OKRs is the business objectives versus what's the value?
So in other words, OKRs are objectives, and then the key result is how do we measure achieving that objective. So a business objective is not how many classes I deliver or how many people I deliver, right? I can play around and say how many Agile teams have I stood up and say that's a business objective. But that doesn't tell me how agile the organization is.
Right.
I could look at how mature the teams are that I'm standing up, and am I increasing the maturity of those teams? Am I increasing customer sat? Am I increasing? No. Those are business objectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can measure those things. I can come up with a measure for that. You know, it ties very closely to how you do a business case. And KPI is when we don't know how to measure those things. So we talk about. So then they have us doing. Okay, you did a class. How many people attended? Whereas an objective might be that when I give the classes, that my NPS score for those classes is going to be high. Because that tells me not only did I give classes to people, but the people who were there found that they got something from it. See, I got Rick thinking over there.
I just have a lot of problems with that. Just the business. I've been trying to get them to commit to some of these things, and it's just the old adage, you know, ROI. Remember the old ROI? And hey, are you really realizing the ROI? And they never did, and they never got penalized for it. But now you want the business to tell you the OKRs, and then it's going to be apparent that they know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. It's kind of like true transparency and vulnerability from the business as well.
Yes.
I'm seeing the business being hesitant to be there, right? So
well, yeah. So this is the same risk we have with Agile. Agile doesn't fix anything. It makes everybody be very, very aware of all the problems everybody's got and everything everybody's in hiding. Right. And then we try to use Agile to fix it. But if you don't have enough architects and you go to Agile, you're gonna find out you really don't have enough architects. We can't stand up the teams we need. We can't deliver the work, and all of a sudden it becomes obvious to everybody. So OKRs are the same kind of thing. Now you do them at every level. So the challenge becomes as people then start from a business organization start wondering, how the hell do I show I'm delivering any value? Maybe I'm not delivering any value. Maybe this is very hard for me. And then they're not going to want to do OKRs, and they'll try to fudge them. And so this is the kind of thing that starts at the top. This is not something that rolls up from the bottom.
Yeah, Art, I've actually put some examples in the chat regarding KPIs, because a lot of companies track KPIs, and I gave some examples like, so healthcare industry may care about patient wait time or average treatment charge or number of educational programs. A retail industry may care about revenue per square foot or same store sales or sales per employee. But there's outputs. But what's the so what of that? Like what's your bigger goal here? And that's your outcomes, right? What are you trying to do? But a lot of companies track or measure those things.
Right. Because they don't know, either they don't know how to measure their objectives, or they're not clear on what their objectives are.
Yep. Art, my objective is making more money.
That's a good one.
Is that an objective?
Right. More profit.
I want to make more profit.
More profit. Right. I want to keep my expenses down and my income up.
The other problem with making more money, making more profit, is it's backward looking. It's a lagging indicator. So I don't know if I'm making more money in the future, in a sense, right? But what I might care about is getting more members or more customers, and being able to see how many customers are buying, and I can project that out. So objectives that are future looking instead of past looking are often better too.
Right. So that's a good one. Right. So Facebook looks at how many new members that, and Wall Street looks at Facebook and says, how many new members are you signing up?
Yep.
And what's the trend?
Yep. If the trend is up, they're going to invest. If the trend is down, then the future is not going to look good. So they're betting on the future, not the past.
Right. Right. Go get the book if you're interested in this stuff. It started with a couple of guys in Google in a garage. Well, not the guy who invented it, but they were the first ones to actually start implementing it. And they worked with the guy who created it. It's a fun book to read. It's very light. It's real fast reading. It'll take you a couple hours.
Which book is this?
God, I forget the name. I have a couple of copies. Measure. I think it's
Measure What Matters.
I think it's called Measure What Matters.
There we go, John Doerr.
John Doerr.
Very good, Joanne.
Just happened to be the name of this presentation. Good, Joanne. All right. And Rick, this is for you. This is another one. Value delivered per epoch or feature.
I love this one.
I like this one. Risk versus value. Value delivered per epic or feature.
I like it too, but how do you know if you're delivering value? Where does that metric come from?
So what you got to do is that you have to assign a value to the cards. You work with the product owner, and our product says, this is just like you're doing points, high, medium, low. 1, 2, 3.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Now I can graph it.
So when you did this matrix, do you use BI or this is something that you built using a different system? Is this Tableau?
It could be Tableau. You could export it because like Jira, there is an ability to assign a priority.
Yep.
Use the priority as a value. Right. And it would really help for the team also if the team understood the value of the stories, and they were trying to do their planning.
All right, I know it's crazy to ask. In traditional project management, do we used to use KPI? I don't recall.
Yeah.
We use KPI. I thought we did.
Yeah.
Because I remember, because I had a conversation with someone the other day. Oh, this is traditional project management. We don't use KPI. And I say, I could have swear I used to use KPI when I used to work as a traditional project manager. They think it's only for Agile.
Right. Yeah. They come together a lot.
That's what
It would be good. Sorry, can you go back, Art? In the terms of like reporting, if you had to report this out, like this slide here, in terms of like, okay, so you added something to the Jira stories. Now you can say, priority or small, medium, large, or whatever, as far as value goes. But then to be able to translate that into a story, like, we delivered this story, this story, based on value, high priority things. So I'm just trying to think how, in terms of word, or how you would present that.
Well, I don't know. Play around and calculate it first and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, just to
what
be
I see
clear.
here.
Sorry, go ahead.
So what I see, you can do this by epic and put a value, but I could go into the trend of like everything is like, let's say you're just putting a value 1 to 10 and everything is always number 10. So I don't know. You will add any value.
So you see, yes. So that's up to the product owner and product manager to fix that. They just can't allow it.
And then how are you putting risk in here as well?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. How do you put risk?
So I would think that you are doing work that mitigates risk, right? Whether it's research, whether you're deciding on things, you're learning, you're growing. Those are to me a lot of the risk mitigation. To me, this shows me agile. Like waterfall would be completely different. To me, isn't this like the normal flow of what agile initiatives should be looking like? This is kind of like the ideal view.
So yeah, so this could be tricky how you calculate risk, but I could see comparing my agile project to a waterfall project, right? And saying, well, all my risk is up front because I'm really not sure whether or not I'm going to be delivering something that's valuable. And I can assign those, a risk to delivering the epic or feature. And then as I move down through my sprints, I'm reducing the risk because I'm getting closer to actually delivering. So you'd have to create some kind of a system to capture that. You can change the risk bar on the graph, and you can put something else in if you want. Could be time. Right? Instead of risk, the bottom row could be just time versus value.
Yeah, I could see this too. Like as your value increases, your risk drops, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Risk could also be cost of delay.
Yeah.
Oh,
my favorite subject.
Back to Saturday.
Then you can use WSGIF for this, for the risk part.
Right.
Then the idea behind the green is once you see the value starts tapping, you should cut the tail of the project and really work on something else.
Now you sound like Alistair.
Yes, we talk about that.
Trimming the tail.
Trim the tail. There you go.
See, so
because Rick, finish that thought. Sorry. Why should you trim the tail?
Because there's probably other initiatives that you have a lot more value in working on. Why are you going to get something that's only going to produce, 1%, return when you have something else that has a lot more?
Rick, I have to have closure. There has to be closure.
Does there have to? Is there really closure? So the question is there really closure in any project?
Yes.
Or there's always maintenance. There's always this. There's always something else that comes up.
Rick, I can't eat half a cannoli. I have to eat the whole cannoli.
Oh, okay. If you
cannot tell me to stop eating the cannoli. I have to finish it off.
But it could be a box of cannolis, especially the little ones.
I personally think the last part of this is all fluff. Okay, it's just maybe changing a couple little colors there or doing some little thing. I don't think that's the full. This is the full product. Here you go. If not, the value gets realized at the end. If that's true, then you actually never realized any value. It would be all at the end.
Well, then that would dispel all my notions, Rick. You're ruining my world now.
All right, let me get through the rest of this couple of slides.
All right,
NPS. I'm not even going to spend any time on it. I love NPS. Everybody loves NPS.
I recommend you, Art. 10. I give you a 10.
Thank you.
I would, definitely recommend.
Go convince the business to live with it. I wanted to mention quality metrics just because Leon mentioned it.
Escape defects. They're
Yeah.
escaped.
Escape defects. Those defects found post-deployment are escape defects.
Yep.
Right? You want to measure quality. And again, this is something that not only the team might look at, but management could well look at these things.
And your customers will feel it. So you
Your
don't want your
customers-
customers telling you have a defect.
Right. So be careful when you start streamlining. And technical debt will do this to you.
Yep.
Some other ideas. So when we talk about return on investment, there's hard benefits and there's soft benefits. There's the total cost to deliver value. Not all businesses will count soft benefits the same as your hard benefits. It can be a hard sell. Employee sat is a soft benefit.
So sometimes some companies are doing eNPS. They're doing employee net performance scores.
Well, you
Where
can use
they're
NPS for anything. You can use
Yes.
employees. You can get a team NPS with their customers.
Exactly. Yes.
Within themselves, you can find out, does the team happy being a team?
Yes.
You can use NPS for anything.
I do that every day to myself, Art. I rate my performance every day.
Do you really?
Yep.
You're
Wow.
Yep.
So how are you doing today, Leon?
How's your day going, Leon?
Yeah, how are you
Today was
trending?
about a 10, but it's dipping right now.
How's the month trending?
So I just
So it's
want
only
to-
day 2, so it's good.
Okay.
So I want you to know I got through all the slides.
Great
Give a
job,
hand for
Art.
Art. Go off mute.